Hey YouTube, it's EvanMagician34, and this is my Fabled variant. This isn't your typical Fabled deck like you've been seeing, but actually I've been very impressed with its performance so far, and I'll let you take a look and see what you think. It starts with 3 copies of Fabled Grimro. You just pitch her when you have a Fabled on the field. She gets any Fabled out of your deck except herself. And a full 3 copies of Fabled Cruz. She's the one who, when she gets pitched, she special summons a Fabled from their grave that's level 4 or lower, as long as it's not herself. And we're running our primary tuner for the deck is going to be 3 copies of the Fabled Cerberus. This thing's really good, as you're going to see with the other things we run. It's just great. It allows you to sync a lot very quickly and for very good levels. But more on that in a second. Our other tuner that we use quite a bit actually is Fabled Kushano. We only run 1, but we can easily search him via Grimro, and we also run Sangan, so those are some good outs to him. And basically, as long as he's in your grave, you can pitch any Fabled monster to bring him back to your hand. And he's a Fiend also, which can be kind of useful, and you'll see that later on. His ability to basically allow you to pitch all your Fableds to activate their effects, regardless of whether or not you have anything on the field, is very useful. And so he's a pretty solid monster for that reason. We are running 1 copy of the Fabled Shawa. Basically, we can search for him if we need him, but otherwise we're just running the 1. He's just a 1-star beast tuner, but he can easily summon himself into play with some friends and whatnot. And we're running 2 copies of a very underestimated Fabled monster, and that is the Fabled Catsith. When this thing's discarded, it destroys any face-up card on the field. It's also a 1-star tuner, which is, that's nice. And we have plenty of ways to use our tuners in this deck. But basically, we have a lot of ways, you're just about to see them, in fact, where we can discard cards. This thing allows you to blow away threats like Royal Oppression, or if there are a number of big synchros on your opponent's side of the field, allows you to destroy them. And it can force out answers from your opponent very quickly, but it also gets around threats like counter traps such as Solemn Warning and whatnot too, basically because you get to destroy threats without having to summon in order to destroy the threat. Which is why it helps get around that. It can only destroy face-up cards, but that's why Catsith is useful. It's sort of a roundabout sort of thing, but you'd be surprised how useful it is. There are 3 copies of Reborn Tengu, of course. He's just awesome in almost any deck, but he allows you to sync many, many times, fill a field with lots of damage, and kill your opponent in 1 turn. Kind of why he's there. He's very hard to argue with. We're running a full 3 copies of the Tricky. This is a 5-star guy. You can discard a card from your hand to special summon him. So basically with Cerberus, this guy is an instant 7-star, which is like Black Rose. But most other decks that can make an easy Black Rose have to use your normal summon to do it. Whereas this guy doesn't use your normal summon. So you can actually Black Rose and see whatever their answer may be or not. And your opponent has to make decisions knowing that you still have your normal summon. And that even after you clean the field with Black Rose, you can still do tricks. You can summon something that can discard, create another synchro for you, you name it. Doesn't hurt that he's also just a decently sized monster and whatnot too. But it gives you some really interesting synchro options. It also behooves us to note that he's a spellcaster. We're also running 3 full copies of Snipe Hunter. This guy can destroy anything he wants, but it is of course a dice roll chance. It's basically a 67% chance of success. But what's most important about this guy is he's a normal summon, very easy to get on the field, that allows you to just pitch cards basically. And he's also a Fiend, which is quite useful. We're running 1 copy of Honest. Obviously, a lot of our monsters are light attribute, and it can be very good to Honest over with them. And we're running Sangan. Sangan searches up most of the monsters in this deck, and he's very utilitarian. About the only thing he doesn't get is Grimro, and that's just fine because he's going to be searching for the same things that Grimro would have searched for anyway. So, we're also running just 1 copy of Main Deck's Max C. Basically, this is almost like a spell. You don't want to run more than 1 because them jamming up in your hand is really bad. But pitching this guy obviously lets you draw lots of cards, which is good for Fables. So, well, truth be told, it's good for every deck. But this deck especially likes to keep its hand well stocked in order to go off. Next card, Card Destruction. Obviously, it triggers a lot of Fabled effects out of your hand, can stock your grave up for effects later, and also draw you cards. Basically, just decks that like to discard, like drawing Card Destruction. No surprises there. We're running 2 copies of Pot of Avarice. This allows you to restock your grave or monsters from your grave into your deck, and especially restock your synchros for repeat abuse. Pot of Avarice is extremely useful in this deck. Also allows you to redraw those Fableds with discard effects so that you can rediscard them. Try not to put Kushano in, obviously. We're also running 2 copies of Monster Reincarnation. It allows you to discard and activate one of your Fabled's effects while simultaneously bringing something back from the grave into your hand that you might want to use. Like, say, discard your Cruise to bring back your Grimrow, for example. Quite useful. And you can discard any card, so if you have extras of other cards that you don't necessarily need, like you draw Giant Trunade and 2 MSDs, you can obviously pitch one of them to your Reincarnation 2 to get a monster back. We're also, of course, running Monster Reborn. That one should be obvious. Dark Hole, also obvious. Mind Control, very useful because you have quite a few tuners and they're all fairly low leveled, so this can be a great way to deny your opponent their monsters and make your own. Book of Moon, just a good control card, keeps your opponent from sinking, it can buy you time, etc. We are running just 1 copy of Creature Swap. We got plenty of small monsters that we like to summon in attack mode and switch them to your opponent. It's not a crucial play that you're going to do very often, but it's still an important thing you can do, and it deserves a slot. Just one more piece of control and disruption. We're running Giant Trunade, of course, to help us get our combo off. We really don't like interference from the back rows. Reinforcing this, we're also running 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. Same reason. And we're even going so far as to run 3 copies of Royal Decree to help keep your opponent once again from interfering with your big go-off turn. So, and remember, that seems like a lot of MT control, but don't worry because you have plenty of ways to discard it, so there's no such thing really as a dead card in your hand. Moving into the extra deck, and this is a pretty tight fit, but you can shift some things around. We do have Trishula, of course. He's a little harder to summon in this deck, but it can be done. Stardust Dragon. Scrap Dragon. Fabled Valkyrus. This guy's especially good with Kushano because you can pitch another Fabled to activate its effect like a beast, like let's say Fabled Cerberus. Put the Kushano, which is a fiend, back in your hand, pitch it his effect, draw a card. He's also 2900 attack, which doesn't stink. Colossal Fighter. Likes to kill 2800 point monsters on the other side. Quite a few of those. Black Rose Dragon. We're only running 1, but you can play with this deck a little bit to run a second one if you want to, although I haven't had problems with just 1 so far. Ancient Sacred Wyvern. He just needs a light tuner. He's very easy to summon in this deck, and you'd be amazed how often he kills people. Arcanite Magician, because Cerberus plus Tricky makes this guy. In many ways, he functions like another Black Rose that actually leaves a monster on the field that one of your 1-star tuners can still sync with, so he's not dead. Lightning Warrior, he's honestable, and he's just another good 7-star target that might represent some extra damage because of his effect. Chaos King Archfiend, you have to use Kushano to make this guy, but he's basically your biggest 7-star beat state because he can switch their guys' attacks and defenses, so he kills almost anything. Quite useful. Bryanak, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, enough said. And he also discards, which is quite nice for Bryanak. Gaia Knight, your other 6-star, just a big beat stick, plain and simple. Ally of Justice Catastor. 1 copy of Fabled Regine. He draws you up to 2 cards. That is to say, he'll draw you so that your total cards in hand will be 2 if they weren't already that or higher when he's summoned. Really good. We're only running the 1. And last but not least, we're running number 39, Utopia. Because occasionally you can get multiple 4-stars like Tengu, and then you've got Snipe in your hand, and in case you need a bigger, fatter monster, this guy's the guy. At least for now, since Generation 4 isn't out at the time that I made this video. So, I'll probably turn it into Steel Swarm Roach later. But, anyway, for now, this is the deck. And until next time, rate, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more cool vids.